Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Juskewycz with an episode of Tee to Green brought to you by DailyFantasyWinners. And this week is the Players' Championship. It is one of the best tournaments of the year. It is unofficially the fifth major, but it is basically treated like a major championship to all the golfers here. It is one of the best fields of the year. It's arguably the best, actually, even including the majors, when you consider who's all in this field and all the different ways you can qualify, basically, from top to bottom. It's also, actually, in my opinion, the best golf tournament from a DFS perspective of the year, and that includes the majors. I know there's not a millionaire maker, on DraftKings, and it won't generate quite as much buzz as the other, as the other tournaments in the majors. But at the same time, we've got a tournament here that's got, a lot of scoreable holes in terms of par fives with eagle opportunities, but you've also got water on every single golf hole, and so that brings a lot of crazy leaderboard changes as well. And it's also a golf tournament that has a lot of close finishes and often has a lot of playoffs at the end that can obviously make things particularly exciting. And we'll get more into this in just a minute, but there's also a golf course that really, all different kinds of golfers can win, especially at the top of the leaderboard, because sometimes we have, a longer ball hitter, and sometimes it's a shorter hitter that does well here, in some years. So it's a great variety. It's a great test to all the daily fantasy players out there as far as doing their research and picking the right guys. And with that, we'll dive into a few more of the specifics. So for this golf tournament, the winning score, actually 4 of the last 5 years, has been 13 under par, interestingly enough. And then last year the winning score was 12 under when Ricky Fowler won the playoff over Kevin Kisner and Sergio Garcia, which is what was definitely one more of the memorable Players' Championships in recent memory. And actually, the cut has also been even par each of the last 3 years as well. So needless to say, there's great consistency here as far as what the winning score is, what the cut usually is. And again, this should be one of the more exciting tournaments. So this golf tournament is played at TPC Sawgrass in Ponte Verde Beach, Florida, kind of in the Jacksonville area, so to speak. It is a Pete Dye design, which means target golf. It is a golf course that basically demands certain types of golf shots on certain holes to specific areas. Basically, you can't just grip it and rip it. It's definitely going to require a lot of accuracy off the tee and a lot of great approaches to the green. It is a ball-striking golf course. I already mentioned this, but there is water on every hole, and it doesn't mean it comes into play necessarily on every hole, but it comes into play on a vast majority of them. And so keeping the ball in play is going to be extremely important. And one of the things actually that, obviously there are many things you can look at as far as what makes professionals so much better than amateurs, even the good amateur players. Really, it's something simple, but it really is true, is that penalty stroke avoidance is one of the biggest reasons why professionals are so good. They're really able to avoid, avoid the big numbers. But that is one of the biggest tests for pros here at this golf course, because there is so much water here, and big numbers will happen undoubtedly Thursday all the way through Sunday. And so diving into some of the more the specifics of the course, it is a par 72, 7,215 yards. There are 4 par 5s on this golf course. All 4 will give up eagles. 3 of the 4 are basically reachable by pretty much everybody in 2, and most people will go for them in 2. Hole 2 is 532 yards, hole 11 is 558, and number 16 is 523 yards. Again, like I said, most players will go for this green in 2 as long as they find the fairway and have a reasonable approach to the green. Some of the shorter hitters will still elect to play a couple of those holes, particularly hole 11 as a 3-shot hole. Pretty much everybody goes for 16-2, and most of the part everybody goes for it in 2 on hole number 2. And then hole 9 is the only one that's a little bit longer. It's 583. It's also a hole that you can't just bomb driver for some of the longer hitters, because there is a creek that runs through the middle of the fairway, and that basically means you can't just bomb at 350 yards, so to speak, or else you're going to be in the water. But you do need a longer hitter that will rip 3-wood the second shot into a very long, narrowish green that's kind of a slight dogleg left that slopes very severely back to front. And it's not a hole that actually a ton of people will go for into, but some of the longer hitters are not afraid to do it, and there will be a few eagles there as well. But for the most part, you can have driving distance of middle of the road or longer hitters. They'll post eagles, and then occasionally a shorter hitter will do the same. Okay, let's see here. Let's just move right on to the statistics of what I think will play well here. The standard of strokes gained tee to green and then proximity to the hole. Ball striking, though, is definitely something we're absolutely going to look at here because so much of it is predicated here on the play from tee to green. And then we are going to look a little bit at driving accuracy. I know it's a little bit of a fickle statistic, but it is extremely important. And we have enough data right now from this year. I think we can look at it a little bit more. And then also you can just take a look at who's really hitting the ball well as of late, and especially even more so if you know of players that are maybe particularly good with their 3-wood as supposed to speak, or hybrids off the tee, because you're not some of the holes are driver holes, no doubt, but there are a lot of holes that driver is not the choice off the tee, and some people will hit a lot of 3-woods. I can tell you right now, Henrik Stenson's probably going to hit his 3-wood a lot off the tee right now, and Stenson's somebody who's done very well on this golf course in the past. More on that in a little bit, but anyways, if you are somebody that follows golf closely, and this is where experience can come into play. If you know somebody that's maybe not very good with their driver, but they are very good with their 3-wood or hybrids and do particularly well in these types of golf courses in Florida, that'll definitely be an advantage. Just to add on to that, this is more of a typical Florida-style golf course. What do I mean by that? A, it's flat. B, there's a lot of water on the golf course. And C, the fairways are fairly narrow, and the rough generally isn't that big of a deal to be in there. It's not fun to be in the rough there. Sometimes you can get it's not the easiest in the world. It's not Augusta easy, but it's not nearly as bad as what some other golf courses might be that they play on the PGA Tour. So in any case, that's what I mean by that. And then other statistics, bogey avoidance, that kind of goes along the lines with avoiding the big number, players that tend to be very good strategically. And then also, though, at the same time, just because the par 5s are a big deal and the Eagles will be a huge part of the equation here in terms of your DraftKings scoring, we do want to look at going for the green, and birdie or better going for the green is very good, good thing to look at as well. So those are the statistics. Just a couple points, some things that I've heard talked about as far as this tournament is concerned so far. There's been a lot of talk about first-timers don't do that well in this golf tournament. I would counteract that point by just simply saying that there aren't a lot of first-timers in this golf tournament to begin with, just because it's really hard to be a first-timer playing in this field, just in terms of the different ways you can qualify for this event. You've got all the past champions. It's basically one of the best fields, and so it's hard for you don't have amateurs in this field that are qualifying, so you don't have a bunch of first timers that way. You just don't have that many from top to bottom, and so obviously when you don't have that many, you're not going to have that many first timers do well. One point on that would be like Kevin Kisner played extremely well here last year and lost in a playoff. He was a first timer last year. So if you hear that first timers are a bad pick here this week, I would not agree with that. I'm not saying that they're going to be great, but I just think I would not use that reasoning as some form of a red flag in terms of not using somebody. And then last thing on course history, there's been some talk about course history here. I think course history is fine to use here a little bit, but just make sure, again, that is not the only thing you are looking at. If somebody has good course history here, but they are a great Florida player, or they're in great form and their ball striking's been fantastic, then yes, that's just like a good supporting reason. But if they have good course history and their ball striking's been terrible this year, struggling to find the fairway, their recent form isn't very good, or they're generally not a very good Florida player, then I would, and maybe they've only played here 5 times and they've maybe made the cut 4 times and have 1 top 10, then it's like, okay, that could just be a little bit of a small sample size and a variance factor there. So I would use it more as like kind of a supporting element to go along with maybe some other reasons of why a player would be good. Okay, let's get on to the picks. Again, same deal. Top plays here will be on the video. The other players that I would certainly be including as well for some of you that will be making more than one lineup will be on DailyFantasyWinners.com in the forum section. Okay, so let's take a look here starting at the top. I'm going to start right at the very top, actually. Rory McIlroy at $11,700. Rory has actually been a very good Florida player here over the last couple of years. He wasn't at the beginning of his career, but Rory has become a much better player as far as playing on different styles of golf courses here over the last few years. And he's playing very well right now. I know he hasn't won in over a calendar year, which is actually a good thing in my estimation, just only in that I don't think his ownership will be that high because, A, of that reason I just mentioned, but B, he is the most expensive, and there are just so many options there near the top and some good plays that I don't think his ownership will be that high, and I think Rory is a fantastic play, and he is the odds-on favorite to win this, barely, but he is the odds-on favorite, and I think that is actually the correct, because if I wasn't worried about cost right now and you asked me to pick one person to win this golf tournament, just if I wasn't considering odds or I just wasn't considering anything whatsoever, just who's my pick, I'm taking Rory to win this golf tournament. So he's my first guy. Scrolling down a little bit, Justin Rose at $10,300. It would be the second guy. He almost won last week. Coulda, woulda, shoulda. Just another week where the putter let him down a little bit, unfortunately. But Rose is somebody who's been actually not only most people think of him as a bomber, in which he kind of is, but he's also somebody that hits the ball fairly straight, and his accuracy has actually been pretty good. And he's been very good just tee to green, top to bottom, which I really like for a place like, which obviously I would really like for a place like Sawgrass. So Justin Rose would be the second guy there, and then out of the 10,000 plus range, that is. Scrolling down here, starting at 9,900, Sergio Garcia. Most people probably see Sergio Garcia's course history and think, okay, this is amazing. He is like a bajillion. He's a former winner, but he has like a bajillion top tens as well, and great history here. Obviously a veteran and has been playing here for probably nearly 20 years right now, or close to it. But the one thing also is Sergio is an outstanding Florida player as well. He does particularly well on Florida-style golf courses, and so I think that's a great supporting reason for him, and he's a great player. Tee to green, and this is a great course fit for him. So even though Sergio might seem a little bit expensive as far as just his price, straight up, when you take a look at some of the other golfers in this field and seen some of the other, tournaments where Sergio's been in, where he's been, priced a little bit, maybe more in the 8,000 range, like majors and things like that. Wouldn't worry about it here at all. I think Sergio is a fantastic pick. And then right below him, I like the next two guys on the list. Hideki Matsuyama, I still think he's underpriced at 9,700. I think he's a guy that should be priced in the 10,000 range. I think it's just, he's a little bit on the younger side, and he just hasn't quite done in the major championships yet, which I think is why the sports books don't give him quite as much love, and quite frankly why the public doesn't give him quite as much love. Matsuyama was a little bit higher owned actually last week than I had anticipated. I thought he would be decently owned, but I did not think he would be as high as he was. He will not be as highly owned this week as he was last week, just simply because of the depth of this field and the players around him. And then Henrik Stenson, 9,500. There's been a lot of love for Stenson as far as some of the things I've heard in terms of recommending him, but the fact that Stenson missed the cut last week will play a decent role, I think, into keeping his ownership still at a reasonable level, and the fact that there's some other great players around him. Stenson will be using his 3-wood certainly, again, like I said earlier, on this golf course, and I think he'll be fantastic tee to green. His accuracy is fantastic, and a former champ here as well, if you like that. I'm going to scroll all the way down now to Zach Johnson at 8,300. I am slightly concerned about ownership here with Zach Johnson. If you take a look at the guys around him, and it's not like the guys around him are bad golfers or anything like that, but they're not exactly the best, like the strongest names in the world in comparison. Danny Willett, yes, he won the Masters, but he hasn't played since then, and he doesn't still have maybe all the wins in the world, or all the top 5 finishes in big tournaments to maybe rack up people wanting to use him. Patrick Reed is somebody that obviously you got to like the 8 top 10s and everything like that, but at the same time, he has not played well in Florida. He doesn't have good driving accuracy necessarily. Just a lot of other guys, Grace Oosthuizen, Billy Horschel, Matt Kuchar, just people like that. There's just a lot. There's not a lot of. They're good players, don't get me wrong, but they're not household names. And Zach Johnson sticks out in particular because he has really good course history here. But it's not only that for why I like him, it's also because he does well on golf courses like this that are more of a ball striker's golf course, good tee to green. There's Harbor Town. He's played really well at there, which is another golf course that could be a little bit somewhat similar here to Sawgrass. And so I'm slightly concerned, and just because also the Zach is 8,300, which is pretty much right at the average price per golfer. If you just made, if you did it's an $8,333 average. So Zach's pretty much right at that middle point, which usually means you can get some players around this point with a high ownership. So you might only want to use Zach Johnson in cash, because I think he's a terrific cash option. I think he's good in GPPs as well, but I'm a little worried about the ownership there. So you maybe, just to be safe, only go with him in cash formats. Going down here, right here to Matt Kuchar, 8,100. I don't think Kuchar's ownership will be very high, despite the fact that he is a defending champion here. He has tremendous tee to green, and he is superb when it comes to ball striking as well on the shorter type of golf courses that have a little bit more to do with accuracy. And he definitely is an aggressive player when the opportunity presents itself to go for the green and 2 when it comes to eagles, which I really and particularly like about Kuchar. So, and if you go back to my earlier video that I made about describing what PGA DFS upside is when it comes to finding eagle opportunities with lower ownership, I think Kuchar really fits the bill for that this week. Scrolling down here, I'm going to go a little bit quicker with some of the cheaper players, and we're going all the way down here to 7,300. Patton Kizzire is somebody that really is just in terrific form and has been doing particularly well on more Pete Dye type of golf courses, a little bit shorter, a little bit more predicated on accuracy. Rafa Cabrera-Bello at 7,100. I am absolutely shocked that he was only 7,100. I was definitely expecting him to be more in the upper 7,000 range. Cabrera-Bello is he's just playing fantastically, and the only real reason why I can think of is that cheap is just simply because he just doesn't have quite the resume as some of the other golfers do. But for the way he's playing golf right now, and regardless of the competition, whether it's the WGC match play or some of the other tournaments he's been playing in, he's been absolutely fantastic. So Cabrera-Bello is definitely a good option there. Jim Furyk at 6,900. I know he missed the cut last week, but this is more of a better fit for Jim Furyk here even this week because Furyk is not a longer hitter, which obviously you don't need to be here at Sawgrass. And again, if you're concerned about, okay, Furyk he just had his first tournament back from the wrist injury and he missed the cut, I would just counter that by saying a lot of big names missed the cut last week, and he also barely missed the cut. As well. And also, Furyk is, a really good player. I think a lot of people just sometimes forget that. Jim Furyk, if he were completely healthy, would be more in the upper 8,000, lower 9,000 range, I would think, just if he were completely healthy and, in decent form. And so right now, I think the fact that he's going to be playing his second tournament after the wrist injury, I don't think the wrist is going to be a factor. It's just shaking off a little bit of the rust, and I could easily see Furyk posting up a top 10 here without a doubt. And so I think the fact that it's only, again, like I said, a second tournament back, I think it's just the price is already factoring into that, so to speak. So I really wouldn't worry about Furyk too much as far as that go when you're getting a phenomenal price like 6,900. Okay, one of my favorite plays, he did okay last week. It was not as good as I'd like to. Just checking that. Yeah, he ended up actually having a horrible fourth round. I actually forgot to double check that. But in any case, Emiliano Grillo was one of my favorite plays last week. Didn't quite work out. I'm going to stick with him, though, this week as someone who's fantastic tee to green, someone who has a fantastic short game as well. There really isn't a hole in his game, quite frankly. And again, one of the younger stars on tour, and he's somebody I just kind of wanted to ride here a little bit that over the next handful of weeks, regardless of the tournament, because I just simply think he's underpriced, and a lot of the statistics really do pan out for him for showing a big peak coming in his game. Soren Kjelsen at 6,600 is a really good play. He's somebody that obviously was actually right there near the top of the leaderboard at the Masters coming down the stretch, which was a good thing to see for him, but also he's been playing extremely well on the European Tour as well. A lot of good things correlating statistics-wise for Soren, which is a little bit tougher to find since he's a European Tour player as opposed to a PGA Tour player, and he plays a lot more on the European Tour, and again, DraftKings only shows the stuff as far as PGA Tour is concerned, but if you look into some of his European Tour stuff, you're going to like what you see, and I think Soren is a great fit for here. And then lastly, we're going to scroll all the way down to 5,800 for Bernard Longer. And yes, he played really well at the Masters, obviously, until that final round. But the other thing that's great about Bernard is that if you look at his results on the Champions Tour, and you look at not just the results, because obviously it's the Champions Tour, which makes it a little bit easier, but more so the statistics that he is showing right now are absolutely fantastic. And I think Longer at 5,800 you're getting tremendous value. He is somebody that I honestly think is a lot better play, just straight up in comparison to the mid $6,000 level players or upper 6,000. I think he's fantastic for GPP options in there as well. And I don't think his ownership will be that high, just because there are still some decent names in the $5,000 range that have shown top 10 potential here, even over the last couple of months. So Longer would be my favorite play in the $5,000 range there. So that is it. Again, reminder that the rest of my picks will be up on the Daily Fantasy Winners forum. That should be posted late Tuesday evening, if not earlier in the day on Wednesday. And then just a reminder, also check out FantasyLabs as well. We've been doing stuff with FantasyLabs here as of late. I've actually started using FantasyLabs here more so over the last few weeks, and it's really helped me organize kind of like my picks and thoughts a little bit, and just using it as a guide, so to speak, to figure out my top plays. And I highly recommend signing up there. You can punch in some of the statistics that I think you should focus on, and you guys can create your own deal there, and maybe it can help you as well. And I think it really will be beneficial for you in terms of putting together some winning lineups. So that's all. If you like this video, like and subscribe on Twitch and YouTube, our channels, that is, at Daily Fantasy Winners, and then of course you can follow me as usual, Juskewycz, and Daily Fantasy Winners at DFSnerd on Twitter. All right, guys, good luck.